I'd like to welcome everybody to the September meeting of the Capital Program Oversight Committee. Do we have any speakers?
No, we have no public speakers, no.
Could I have the approval of the minutes for July 20th? A motion? Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Committee work plan, Mr. Stewart?
No changes to the work plan this month.
Thank you. Now I'd like to have the quarterly update on the Long Island Railroad and Metro North positive train control. That'll be Debbie Chin with her team.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Chen. I'm the Executive Director for PTC for Long Island Railroad. On my right is Anthony Forcina. He's my counterpart at Metro North. I'll be giving the update for the PTC project on behalf of both railroads, and at the end, if you have specific questions, one of us will field those questions based on whether it's for Metro North or Long Island. Since our last report in June, there's no change to the budget. The railroads still expect to complete installation by December 2018. Unfortunately, intermediate milestones have slipped due to delays in design and manufacturing of equipment, which I'll discuss in more detail in my presentation. And we're in discussions currently with the systems integrator to develop and implement a recovery schedule. Part of our plan to move forward and to maintain progress on the project is to conduct our design reviews based on subsystem. Start testing these subsystems in coordination with our phased software implementation plan, with the expectation of getting the baseline software to pilot test operational scenarios and configuration in the first quarter of 2016. As hardware designs progress to a sufficient level of detail, we will proceed with production so that our in-house forces can start installations for both pilot and non-pilot territories. We've already started to install and test transponders and wayside interface units this month. And notwithstanding delays to date, we're still targeting full PTC implementation by December 31st, 2018. Since June, we've made some progress, like I've discussed, in design and manufacture of wayside equipment. We've installed transponders between Bridgeport and New Haven, and collectively, the railroads have installed wayside interface units, which are the racks that interface to our existing field equipment. We've developed prototype and mock-ups for several vehicle types to ensure form and fit, and we're progressing towards completing our designs for both the office and communication hardware systems. We did report at the last June update that we would have progressed this a little bit more, but I think that we've progressed sufficiently to start testing as per the System Integrated Pilot Program Plan. This testing is at a component level. However, it will serve to as the fundamental building blocks for testing the fully integrated PTC system. We continue to meet with Amtrak and our tenant railroads to finalize interoperability design. We also have gotten, Long Island Railroad has gotten approval for radio site construction permits to start building antenna poles and communication cabinets on our pilot segments. Metro North's approval is still pending, and they're currently still working with the FCC to try to get the spectrum for the remaining 4 counties. We had anticipated that we'd get approval in July. However, to date, we're still waiting. Each railroad has 2 pilot segments that we're using for our pilot program. These are representative of our network. These sections were selected because they include all the PTC functions that we plan to eventually test. In June, we reported that there was a strong likelihood that we would miss our intermediate milestones by several months, and that we would start testing in phases. Since that report, the railroads have sat down with the systems integrator and reviewed their functional phasing plan. Pilot testing will be conducted in 3 phases to allow us to test as the design progresses. Phase 1 will include the Amtrak-approved functions. Phase 2 will include the required functions that will be modified for our operations, and Phase 3 will include all of the functions for interoperability. We believe that this phased approach will provide more robust testing, system testing of the PTC functionality as the software is developed, and also allow us to start installing hardware in parallel. Testing of installed components has commenced. However, the operational testing phase of the pilot has been delayed by 3 months and will commence in early 2016 with the delivery of the baseline software. We're expecting that we'll get 3 software builds over the course of 2016, with the last version expected in the fall, extending the completion of the pilot to December 2016, which is 5 additional months than what we had reported last time. It's important to note that, moving forward with the installation of hardware will introduce a small risk to having to go back to the field to make some changes later on, which is not necessarily ideal, but we believe this is the best approach to test and commission the PTC system, given its size and complexity within our very aggressive schedule.
So I can fully understand this. Is the testing on these segments being done with test trains or existing normally scheduled trains?
Go ahead. Put your mic on, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You have to tell me now.
They'll be done with test trains.
Test trains?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so a lot of the testing will also be done before we actually get on revenue track. Okay, the 90-day look ahead. Most of our focus for the next 90 days will be to advance and finalize our design and also to prepare for our pilot. Both railroads will continue to install wayside and onboard components, and we'll try to finalize all our subsystem level designs, start to conduct environmental testing, first article inspections on most of our hardware, and also start to install the office system for our primary location. We will also focus on completing our RF surveys and to continue to build out our communications network for the pilot segments. Metro North will continue to work with their tenant railroads. They've got quite a few to work with, in addition to working with Amtrak to ensure full interoperability. They don't anticipate that working with the freight railroads will have any impact to the overall PTC implementation schedule. This slide here is a modified version of this table that you saw in June. It includes an additional column in royal blue to show our forecast throughout 2015 to 18. This is similar in format to the information that we are reporting to the FRA on a monthly basis. As I had highlighted, our forecast will most likely not meet our originally planned targets. However, we plan to try to recover the schedule over the course of the next few years to make sure that we meet our 2018 deadline. If we start to manufacture equipment faster, these numbers will definitely improve. Also note, the wayside miles are not indicative or representative of the number of track miles. In many cases, if there's multiple tracks in a particular track segment, it'll be a little bit more work than other segments that only have 2 tracks. It includes installation of wayside interface units, antenna poles, communication cases, transponders, and fiber cable. The onboard numbers are a little bit easier to see. My expectation is that once we get through a learning curve for installation, we probably will be able to most likely increase our production, and then also start to, we're working with the shops right now to make sure that we can meet the, the production rates that we need to in order to keep the schedule. These are just some photographs of the work that has been done within the last quarter. You can see on the left top is the a communication pole that was installed with the antenna on top on the Port Washington line. On the right is the wayside interface unit. This equipment interfaces to the existing signaling system. And on the bottom is the M7 aspect display unit. It's a mock-up on the M7 train. These next set of pictures are from Metro North, showing actual installation work at one of their interlockings. Some of their transponder installations on the pilot location number 1, which is on the New Haven line, and then the installed cab car PTC aspect display unit. That concludes my report. Does anyone have any questions?
Susan?
I have two questions. One is, would it be possible for you to speak with New Jersey Transit and offline let me know what the status is for the Port Jervis line? Because I know we don't report on that since New Jersey Transit is doing it. And my second question is, I see that Long Island Railroad has one of those tall antenna poles. And I know that on west of Hudson, the MTA police and the state police are putting in a series of monopoles. Are those poles acceptable for the antennas, or do we have to have more than one pole? And you
In many cases, we're taking the benefit of having already the pole there if it happens to be in the right location. So both antennas will be installed on that same pole, depending on the RF analysis that we've conducted.
Okay. If there are additional poles to go in to my county or to Rockland County, could you let us know, because it's an issue locally?
Yeah, our plan is to complete our RF analysis, full analysis for the entire network, and then at that point I'll know by county which, what each application will look like.
Excuse me, could you inform me also?
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Albert?
I see on one of your slides that there is a footnote about the Port Jervis line. What's the status of the Pascack Valley line?
We'll get an answer on both,
Yeah.
because they're both NJ
Yeah.
Transit,
Yeah.
so we'll get them both.
I'll give you an
Yeah.
Okay.
If there are no further questions, we'll now have the independent engineers report. Jerry Gardvis.
Good afternoon. As far as the project status, we don't see any budget changes since the last time we reported on the project estimate, so it's still valid at this point. On the schedule, while we recognize that the FDR milestone slated for July has slipped a little bit, but the pilot test has extended, we still don't see any change to the end date of the project. The design is pretty complex and it's contributing to the delay, and by phasing in the functionality of the components and the start of operational tests several months down the road here accomplishes part of this mitigation. We have one slide on the review remarks. We're in agreement with what's been presented today at the CPOC. A comment we have on the LIRR M7 fleet onboard installation. There is a shop, the West Side Yard facility, that was supposed to be ready in October for the Long Island Railroad to start implementing their onboard equipment installation. That shop is under construction by Amtrak and it won't be ready in October. The revised equipment installation that was shown on the screen before does take into account that information. Going forward, we feel that if further delays occur, the Long Island Railroad may need to consider alternatives to catch up and to meet their targets. And has been mentioned on numerous occasions, the Metro North radio spectrum to conduct the pilot test is available, but not the spectrum for the 4 counties. The IEC sees that this is an issue that will impact the project if it's not resolved by middle of 2016. That's all I have.
Comments or questions from the board? Separate and apart from this report, if you read the newspaper, you will watch the state of play at a congressional level with respect to positive train control. You've got a position being assumed by the Senate of the United States and a different position being assumed by the House of Representatives. The actual legislation as it exists today requires that this technology be installed by December 31st of this year, and very few, if any, well, a few railroads will be in compliance. And it's more than posturing, but for some very, very heated discussions are going on with respect to, on the Class 1 railroad side, whether they're going to let passenger service operate on their tracks, whether they'll transport hazardous materials. And the project group is focused on implementation of PTC as soon as possible here. And that's what their focus will continue to be. We will probably have to make a report separate and apart from CPOC with respect to what those legislative issues are, so we can keep you informed, because it actually doesn't affect just Long Island and Metro North, but Amtrak and NJ Transit as well. I don't have any of the other railroad presidents here, I don't believe, but they are staying close. I'm sorry, guys hit on me. But did that accurately sum up what where we stand? Okay, so we'll keep you informed.
I assume the fines and penalties which the Congress of the United States may actually impose upon us will be paid for out of the PTC budget?
Well, it's not only fines to the organization, it's fines to employees as well.
I understand.
I mean, it's very onerous. No, it's a very thorny issue to sort out.
It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You know, so they're
This is
going to
Congress.
So they're going to fine us for something that they don't have a clue how to implement in the first place.
And
Okay,
that's
I
why,
get the point.
that's why I wanted to make sure the project team is
Right,
focused on
well,
it.
that's the point. There
And
was
doing it as soon as
there was no analysis of the original date, let alone the existing date. So it's, all right, we'll get to that when we get to that.
Mr.
But-
Albert.
So the budget, so your budget may actually be reduced.
God forbid.
You know, if I can add something to that,
We just got Debbie to go over there and take this project. We don't want to scare her away.
the lack of clarity from the government is amazing because we don't have the bandwidth, and that's controlled by a government agency too. So they're not talking to each other, let alone us.
Am I correct in the assumption that we're still talking about Greenport Branch and Waterbury Branch being PTC ready but not actually installed?
Does somebody in the project team want to answer? The main line out to Ronkonkoma and the Waterbury branch. That always was dark territory. Right. Okay. Moving on, next item, quarterly MTA Capital Construction Company update. First will be project number 7 line extension.
Good afternoon.
Congratulations, Sean.
Thank you, Tom.
You had hair when you started this project.
A full head. I will start with a project overview. First, I'd like to report on schedule. It is a pleasure to report that revenue service was achieved on September 13, 2015. I would like to thank and recognize the MTA staff, New York City Transit, the contractors, designers, and construction managers, all who contributed to this historic achievement. It's something to be very proud of. The construction of the secondary entrance, which was not required for revenue service, is 49% complete. The Site P total construction is $83 million. The Moynihan Group, the developer of the overbuilt structure of Site P, has approached HYDC and MTA with a request. In order to accelerate his own development work, Moynihan requested that our contractor, John P. Pacone Incorporated, also complete foundation work for his building. Pacone informed us that to perform the developer's work, it would delay construction of the secondary entrance. HYDC, our funding partner, has agreed to this plan and concept as long as they are not spending additional money. The developer must be responsible for all costs, and a completion date for developer work must be agreed upon. All formal written agreements are progressing. Turning to a cost overview. Currently, the program is forecasted to be completed within budget. Next slide. This slide presents the plan versus actual cost performance. As you can see, the actual expenditures are trending favorably for both total project cost and third-party construction costs. Actual curves are slightly below the planned curves, as the contingency money has not yet been expended. The total project cost expenditures through July is $2.29 billion. Third-party construction expenditures through July is $1.925 billion. Next slide, please. This slide presents cost and schedule contingency status. Currently, the project has $46.9 million, or 46% in remaining contingency, versus 2% of construction work remaining. The project forecasts a remaining contingency balance of $2 million at completion. Next slide, please. This slide shows the critical concerns discussed at the last CPOC meeting. All mitigations were performed in a timely manner to achieve revenue service. They are no longer of concern. Site P completion date will be extended based upon an agreement to be finalized between the developer and the contractor. With that, that closes my report.
Congratulations to everybody who were involved, starting with former Mayor Bloomberg to everybody that built this project. The ceremony was an amazing event, and when Revenue Service opened, there weren't just rail fans. There were people who had in no way ever expressed interest in transit that were there to see this extension, and I hope we have a lot more of these kinds of events.
Metzger.
I was sorry to miss the opening, but I was happy to take a ride from Times Square over on Saturday. It's full of tourists, including me, riding up and down on the inclined elevator a few times. The number of selfies was so funny. I took a few of those myself. And I just want to say that the engineering is spectacular. The architecture, art, and landscaping is gorgeous, and it's really a beautiful job. Thank you very much. I know how much hard work it took, and I know we were always yelling about doing it faster, but it was worth it.
Independent report, Darlene Rivera.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The IEC would like to take this time now to congratulate MTACC and New York City Transit on all the hard work and long hours I know that they spent to achieve this important milestone. Congratulations, it was a job well done, and really appreciate the cooperation among the groups. Continuing on my report, the last remaining contract, as Sean stated, on Site P includes the work for the secondary entrance to the 34th Street Station. It has been delayed as a result of the coordination of the handover delay between the predecessor systems and finished contract and the coordination efforts to accommodate the Site P developer. MTACC is currently assessing the impacts to the schedule of this contract. Budget, the overall project remains at $2.42 billion. Based on the project information provided, the IEC currently forecasts the project will be completed within budget. The contingency at project completion remains forecast to be $2 million. Additional monies may be needed for TA labor and extension of time for the system that finishes contract, which the substantial completion is going to go to the end of the year. I said additional monies may be needed. In other words, the $2 million contingency may be reduced further because the substantial completion of the system and finishes contract is going to go on a few more months. All delay impact costs associated with the developer work at the Site P contract will be incurred by the developer. That concludes my report of the number 7 line extension.
Before we move on, I want to echo the comments many of the board members. An outstanding piece of work, an excellent finished product, and something that I think the MTA and our customers can be proud of. The only comment I'll make is that, and I want this to be as constructive as possible, and I think you touched on it, Susan. And yes, we were urging, like, let's get this done. But I've never, ever been associated with an expansion of a system project anywhere where there wasn't at the front end sometimes undue pressure put on what they think the realistic completion date is. And as a takeaway, especially when it comes down to the testing and commissioning issue, I think we really need to be, we don't want to let off the pressure too much such that it gets extended, because time is money. But at the same time, we want to make sure we have this balance between what is reasonable and what is unreasonable in terms of getting things done. But it's an excellent work product. Next is the progress report in Second Avenue Subble and Neil Parikh.
Thank you, Chairman. The project is on schedule to meet the December 2016 revenue service date. The project is within budget. The progress since the last report is as follows. Completed the installation of the escalator in entrance 1 at 63rd Street Station. Completed 72nd Street Station entrance 1 rock excavation. This is the one in 301 East 69 Street. In July, and started the permanent concrete work. Completed turnover of the milestone rooms to the systems contractor by end of September. Complete facility power installation at 96th Street Station and commenced the Con Edison testing and inspection. Installed 11,500 linear foot of track out of total 22,000 linear feet of track. 90-day look ahead. Complete wide area network testing at 63rd Street Station by end of October 2015. Complete escalator, HVAC, and fan testing and commissioning at 63rd Street Station. Complete installation of the facility power at 72nd Street and 86th Street Station. Start the permanent street restoration work on the west side of 2nd Avenue at 96th Street Station. Next slide, please. Actual dollars spent is less than 2009 planned expenditure. This is due to the favorable construction bid received for the construction contracts, and station contractors are falling a bit behind on construction expenditure than the planned. The estimated completion is at $4.384 billion. Next slide, please. The project had 186 calendar days in contingency in 2009. The current scheduled contingency is 49 calendar days. Budget. The project had $322 million contingency in 2009 budget. The current budget contingency is $157 million, which is $18 million less than the last report. The reduction is in contingency is due primarily to additional work orders in the construction contracts. Next slide, please. Critical milestone and issues. The first issue is the facility power energization at 96 and 72nd Street Station may not be available in time to support the planned testing and commissioning activities. The impact is delay in availability of the permanent power will have a direct impact on the project contingency. The mitigation, we have accelerated both stations for installation activities, and the facility power energization at both 72nd and 96th Station are on schedule. Next slide, please. The issue is the facility power energization at 86th Street Station is forecast to be delayed 3 months from the December to March 2016 date. The impact is delay in availability of permanent power to March 2016 will reduce the current contingency from 49 calendar days to 29 calendar days if not mitigated. The mitigation includes the project has implemented an acceleration plan to improve the energization date from March 38, 2016 to February 28, 2016. The project is resequencing testing and commissioning activities to further reduce the impact on project schedule. Next slide, please. The issue is the 86th Station finish contract is 1 month behind from the need date due to the delay in the facility power, which I spoke on the previous slide, and entrance 1 escalator fabrication and installation. The impact is this 1 month delay to the current forecast does not impact the revenue service date of December 2016. The project has implemented an acceleration plan to improve the permanent power energization date, and contractor is working with the escalator manufacturer on an accelerated schedule for installation of the equipments. Next slide, please. The issue is the completion of the entrance 1 at 72nd station to be completed by September 2016 in order not to maintain the revenue service date of December 2016. The contractor is on schedule to complete the concrete lining work for entrance 1 by October 2015 and completion of entrance 1 work by September 2016. Next slide, please. The issue is the track installation is delayed due to the slow progress with cable pulling and track work installation. The impact is installation of the track work is close to the critical path and could impact program contingency. MTACC has accepted the recovery plan in June from the contractor, which shows all track work completed by May 2016. This date supports the RSD date of December 2016. The contractor is working multiple shifts to install signal, traction power, and communication cables in the tunnels and stations. The contractor has modified track sequencing to allow multiple crews to work within the same track zone. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Before we go to the independent engineers report, any comments or questions from the board? Kent, please deliver the IEC report.
We've reviewed the schedule, budget, and risk for the committee this month. Let me start with the schedule. Our main concern is 86th Street. The station finish contract is running behind its recovery plan that's necessary to support the project's schedule for completion in December of 2016. In our view, the contractor is yet to demonstrate consistently the level of work effort needed to make the project schedule. And therefore, in our opinion, the schedule contingency for the project as a whole is now exhausted. In addition, a couple other points at 86th Street. As Anil spoke earlier, the provision of permanent power is 2 to 3 months late. This will constrain the testing of the equipment. Secondly, there are continuing delays to the turnover of key equipment rooms to the systems contractor, who has to put in the communications, the traction power, and the signaling equipment for the railroad to run. Besides 86th Street, a couple other things of note. The track work installation, which we talked about several months ago, has missed its first 2 milestones in its recovery plan to get everything complete by next May. This effort is now near critical for the project's completion. Secondly, in the bigger picture, you should know that the project schedule now shows that the completion of the 3 new stations, plus the entire systems contract that puts in power, track, communications, and signaling, all are now due to finish within 8 weeks of each other. We see this as a concern for staff resource availability that needs to be addressed. Turning to the budget, projects on budget, the contingencies above what's been agreed with our federal funding partners as a minimum. Secondly, we've been tracking the project's construction expenditures, and we find that they need to increase to an average of $40 million a month for the remainder of the 16 months in the project schedule. From the current $34 million, that's a 6-month rolling average, in order to support the project schedule to complete. Finally, turning to schedule risk, we have an ongoing risk assessment that has identified what we feel are the top 5 challenges to revenue service in December 2016. These are the manage the design and scope changes, the testing and commissioning problems with the fire alarm system, delays due to staff resource availability that I just mentioned, delays in the installation of key communications and power equipment, and a delay in the completion of the water mist or the sprinkler system for the 2 stations where that's an issue. Mr. Chairman?
discussed with staff the importance of construction management oversight on this project because there's some questions that we need to answer. Projects of this magnitude have problems like this, but you need to have a structure in place to be able to catch it. So they're gonna be talking with the project construction management staff. Any further questions or comments? Side access, Program Manager Bill Goodrich.
On East Side Access, we'll continue on schedule for the 2022 revenue service date. The budget remains within the 10.178 billion budget. Some of the progress I wanted to highlight for the board, as far as our Manhattan South Structures contract, we've completed the lower exterior walls in the East Cavern in July. In terms of our Plaza Substation and Queens structure contract, CQ32, we completed the rehab work on the eastbound side of the 63rd Street Tunnel in June and transferred tunnel access from that contractor to our Manhattan North Structures contract, CMO06. We've also, just last week, received the technical and schedule proposals for the GCT Station Cavern and Track contract. And we're looking to receive the cost proposals in October next month. As far as the 90-day look ahead, we have 4 contracts that you'll note there that we expect to achieve substantial completion. Our early fit-out contract in the GCT Concourse, the 55th Street Vent Plant Facility, and the 2 Herald Structures contracts, CH53 and CH54A. We also expect to advertise another contract in Herald, the Tunnel A construction, in the 90-day look ahead. And we also expect to award the midday storage yard CIL procurement, the Signal Hut procurement contract, VQ33. As far as cost and schedule performance, the actual versus plan overall is about 98.6% at this time, and third-party construction is about 97.2%. In terms of cost and schedule contingency, the current contingency remains the same at 22 months. As far as budget contingency, the current contingency is now $688 million overall. Last report, it was at $706 million. We have an unallocated contingency of $366 million and an allocated contingency of $236 million. The net decrease in this cost contingency is due primarily to the addition of new woodside poles because the existing Long Island Railroad poles cannot accommodate the new communications to signal cables that the project is installing. As far as critical issues, the first one is with our Manhattan North Structures contract. They are milestone number 2, which is the completion of the lower tunnels. They are currently behind schedule and not meeting their recovery schedule. This milestone is important. It's critical in that it needs to be completed, scheduled to be completed by February of next year in order to provide site access for the CMO07 contract. Their access is scheduled to commence in April of next year. It's this milestone is currently forecast to be achieved on April 20th. As far as mitigation, the contractor is utilizing robotics for the application of shotcrete now, as opposed to a hand application. That commenced in September, and we expect to report on the results of the increase in productivity at the next CPOC meeting in December. Next critical issue is the facility systems contract, and that is the design completion to determine the IST plan and schedule. Contractor's design is underway. It's forecast currently to be complete in July 2016. That's 4 months later than scheduled. Delays to the design completion have the potential to delay the integrated systems testing. The mitigation is that the project is working with a contractor in sequencing the various system designs to reduce that delay. Any remaining delay will be mitigated during construction. Next issue is the same contract, facility systems, and that is to exercise 3 options in the contract. The contract contains 3 options totaling $147 million, which need to be exercised not later than November 6th of this year. These options are funded in the 2015 to 19 capital plan. Without the funding in place, these options will expire. The project would have to negotiate changes to the contract later and to add the scope of work of these options. The mitigation is the MTA is investigating alternative funding sources to fund this. Next slide is our procurement of the GCT Station Cavern and Track Contract, CMO 07. As I mentioned, this is underway. The untimely award of this contract would have the impact of on integrated systems testing and potentially impact project contingency. The award should be made by November 2015. That was our preference. That would provide additional time for the contractor's procurement and delivery of precast concrete elements, but it does not need to be made until January of 2016. The award of this contract is contingent upon approval of the 2015 and 19 plan. Next issue is in Herald Interlocking, and that's the cutover of the Signal HUD H3. This will be our first cutover with civil speed enforcement criteria incorporated and allows for cutover of the follow-on CILs. The H3 cutover remains the top priority in 2015, and Herald is currently is on schedule for November. Next slide is Amtrak support for our westbound bypass contract, CH57A. Wanted to highlight to the board that since April 18th and 19th, the contractor has been unable to work 14 out of 19 weekends that the project has requested on the tunnel launch pit due to the lack of outages or Amtrak resources. The impact of this is that the mining of the westbound bypass tunnel has been delayed to November, and substantial completion of the contract overall is currently delayed 11 months, with additional future delays possible. The project continues its efforts to coordinate and work with Amtrak on securing track outages and the necessary protection resources. Next slide. Yes, from the original contract substantial completion date, we're forecasting currently an 11-month delay. That's right. That's an overall. Right. This critical issue is the Amtrak resources for the remainder of the Herald interlocking work, all of the interlocking work. The Amtrak electric traction direct labor, which we've discussed before, has not been consistent and continues to cause schedule delays and cost impacts. We've seen no improvement in the weekend resources and the level of ET direct labor. Scheduled critical work is not getting completed. As an example, out of nearly 500 critical path activities that were scheduled between June and August, 25% were either canceled or limited in their work. And 60% of those cancellation limitations were attributable to Amtrak resources. That concludes my report.
Any comments or questions before we go to the independent engineer? Kurt?
Good afternoon. The Eastern Access budget remains at 10.178 billion with a contingency of 688 million. This is a reduction of 18 million compared with June 2015. And in addition, there are cost uncertainties putting further pressure on the contingency. The revenue service date is December 2022 with a 22 months unallocated contingency. The Herald work required for revenue service remains off the critical path by 3 months. This is a loss of 3 months since last reported in June 2015. The IC has the following concerns with the facility systems work. The contract is falling behind in achieving the design milestones, and due to this delay and delays to predecessor work, the contractor's field workforce in August was roughly at half the anticipated strength. The current contractor schedule shows also unattainable resource peaks for installation and local testing. And the current integrated systems testing start date has been delayed from August to November 2018. So based on the ongoing delays and schedule issues, the IEC analysis shows a completion date for the facility systems work in July 2020 versus the currently planned November 2019 completion. The IEC has the following concerns in Herald. Third-party work in Herald continues to be delayed by lower than expected production rates and inconsistent Amtrak support, and this could potentially further erode the contingency between Herald and the project critical path. In addition, delays to the signal hut cutover plan due to extended preparatory work and longer than expected testing durations will push out Herald infrastructure improvements and civil structural work required for revenue service. The IC has one recommendation regarding the facilities system schedule. The IC recommends that MTACC addresses the unattainable resource peaks for installation and local testing in the current contractor schedule to improve schedule certainty. This concludes my report.
Any comments or questions from the board? Mitch?
Are there contractual requirements for Amtrak to provide resources and time, or is it just a agreement of some kind?
This is primarily an agreement. There are no contractual requirements per se.
So there are no penalties?
That's correct.
Other than our penalties?
That's correct.
Nothing like having an agreement with somebody who doesn't care what our penalties are.
I will not comment on that.
I will. Okay.
Well, I don't know if they don't care. We don't have any mechanism to be able to enforce it. That's clear. There are a whole host of competing priorities. You know, when you go points west from Herald all the way through to the other side of the river, Moynihan and things like that. But certainly the one dogged problem we've had probably over the course of the last 18 months is the Amtrak resource issue, whether it be for electric traction resources or other folks. And it's time for another meeting on the Mount. So we're just getting further and further delayed.
I mean, there have been lots of articles in the paper in relation to Amtrak's request to us and others for the New Jersey tunnels. And, you know, I'm more than happy to help them in New Jersey once they start to help us in Queens.
Point well taken. Any further comment? Next, we're going to hear a report on Cortlandt Street, progress review. Uday?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of the project overview, substantial completion is August 2018, pending finalization of the risk assessment. In terms of the budget is 158.4 million, pending finalization of the risk assessment. In terms of progress, since the last quarter, 1,200 linear feet of the southbound track was reconstructed and completed. We have also completed relocation of 1,200 feet of the third rail and 600 feet of the northbound track. We also completed 50% of the platform temporary shielding removal. In terms of look ahead, complete northbound track reconstruction, including third rail, begin platform reconstruction, complete the design of the northern access, and finalize the risk assessment. Critical milestones and issues. Complete design of the northern street entrance. The issue was to complete the northern entrance by the first week of October. This is on target to finish it by the first week of October 2015. We are working, in terms of mitigation, we are working with all stakeholders to expedite the design of the approval of the design. Next slide, please. In terms of the critical, the next activity is the issue change order of northern street entrance. The issue here is the negotiation of the northern street entrance must be completed in a timely manner to allow for construction change order to be issued in December of 2015. Delay in issuing construction change order at the end of this year will potentially impact the elevated conduit installation at the northern entrance. In terms of mitigation, we have initiated a two-part change order to mitigate potential delays. Part 1 will begin preparation of the shop drawings, while Part 2 is still in negotiations. Next slide, please. Complete all track work. The issue is to complete all right-of-way work by June 2016. Delay in completing right-of-way work by June 2016 will impact completion of the project due to unavailability of GOs after June 2016. Mitigation. Track work has progressed well, and all track work is expected to be completed by mid-November 2015. And all right-of-way work, platform and platform edge conduits installation will be completed by June 2016. Project will closely monitor this progress. Next slide, please. Demolition of the existing path station, northern temporary access by the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey. Issue, Port Authority of New York, New Jersey needs to demolish the path station, northern temporary access, in order for the construction to begin in January 2016. Port Authority has delayed demolitions start October 2015, 1 month later than last reported. Delay in demolition by the Port Authority will delay day for day of the northern entrance, which in turn may delay opening of the station. Mitigation. An agreement with the Port Authority is under development to ensure that the demolition is completed and site is handed over to the MTA to begin construction in January 2016. This completes my report.
Any comments or questions? Independent Engineers Report, Patrick Eskew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The current established project budget is $158.4 million. The most recent preliminary risk assessment results indicate that the project budget is likely to increase. The current budgetary contingency contains a substantial amount of unnegotiated change orders, such as the addition of the north entrance and the updated communication system. This could reduce the available contingency to an unacceptable amount for the current established project budget. As far as schedule, the project has an estimated substantial completion date of August 2018. The track right-of-way construction is progressing on schedule and is currently trending to be complete by the June 2016 milestone date. The station north entrance design is on schedule to be complete in time to issue a change order for the construction by the end of the year. IC concerns and issues. Logistics. The logistical challenges and complexities of the site pose additional costs and schedule risks to the project. A key concern is that the Port Authority must demolish the north temporary access to the PATH station before the Cortland Station north entrance can be constructed. In addition, we observed that a funding reserve should be identified to address the potential project budget shortfall. The IC has 2 recommendations. Finalize outstanding design and code issues related to the north entrance before they impact the project schedule and budget. Develop a cost and schedule recovery plan to address the potential contingency shortfall. That concludes my report.
Any comments or questions of the independent engineer? If not, we'll move on to capital program status. Craig?
Commitments and completions highlights can be found on page 70 for August. Commitments, MTA agencies plan to commit a total of $3.1 billion in 2015 from approved capital programs, including 34 major commitments. To date, agencies planned 27 major commitments, 17 were committed, 10 were delayed. A total of $2.1 billion was committed through August versus a $2.5 billion year-to-date goal. By year's end, the MTA forecast meeting or exceeding the $3.1 billion commitment goal. On completions, the MTA plans a total of $2.6 billion in project completions in 2015, including 25 major completions. To date, agencies plan 20 major completions, 8 have been completed, and 12 others have been delayed. The MTA completed $1.2 billion versus $1.9 billion year-to-date goal. The shortfall is due to delays that are generally forecast to be achieved in 2015. By year's end, the MTA forecasts meeting 87% of its $2.6 billion completion goal. There are 2 traffic light. I'd like to bring the committee's attention to 2 reports, quarterly reports. Traffic light reports on core program on page 82, and a traffic light report for the Sandy program on page 108. Additionally, there's a quarterly change order report on page 126. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Hearing none, I think that completes the agenda. So may I have a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? Aye.